So let's fast forward to 2017 and you're at Lantern and you had been in kind of product roles at other tech and healthcare, health tech related companies. What, I guess, was the catalyst to you deciding to found your own company?
For all those points to come together for me, I have to rewind like 10 years before that, where, and I'll go quickly through that, but the starting factor for me was in 2007. I, for the first time, had to use the healthcare system in a more in-depth way than I ever had before, and was just extremely frustrated and felt entirely disempowered, and got very interested in consumerism in healthcare and what at that time was being called the empowered patient. And so got really excited about the way that technology could drive and change that, and wanted to really start digging into that direction. And that led me down that path of starting to build products that could help people that way. And so at the easy intersection point of those considerations is really sort of the typical Silicon Valley, disruptive, let's add consumerism to stodgy old industries. And there are a number of companies doing that, and I was excited and fortunate to dive in with them. One of those companies was 23andMe, offering a direct-to-consumer genetic test. So I was really excited to join and help build the product team there. And on my third day of work, we got a letter from the FDA saying, actually, this is not a consumer product. This is a medical device, and it needs to come through our approval process. So it was obviously like everything came to a screeching halt. It was a sort of very eye-opening experience, and really fortunate experience in retrospect to see the collision of those two forces and a productive path through it. So we were able to submit and get approval for the first direct-to-consumer genetic test approved by the FDA. And for me, that was formative in terms of wanting to drive that kind of consumer change, not as an outside-in approach, but really from an inside-out. So having to build those things into the way healthcare really operates, the way it's delivered, paid for and regulated. And so that's how I found Lantern as that last stop before starting Brightside, where it was a startup that had an investment and backing from a health system. So they had gotten an investment from UPMC Enterprises. So they had not only a health system, but a plan behind them. And so to me, that was this awesome opportunity and the confluence of forces there, and really great team and people there. What I learned as we were doing some of our work and with some of the clinics at UPMC was that the magnitude and depth of the challenge around mental health care was way more complicated, and it just a much worse state than I had previously imagined. So we talked so much about access to care, and Lantern's solution was a great way for people to get quality care in an affordable way. But there was very little talk about quality of care. And what we saw as we looked at one of the best health systems in the country was that there were major gaps in the quality of care that were really systemic. And so that was what got me excited. While everybody in the industry was talking about access, I said, well, if we help more people get access to low quality care, we're not really solving the problem. And so that really started me on a mission of like, what does it take to build higher quality care? How do you actually adhere to what the evidence shows works? How do you build a great consumer experience on top of it? How do you empower more timely and informed decision-making by clinicians? And how do you do that in a way with measurable outcomes so that you can actually demonstrate your results and keep getting better? So that was our challenge. And I was fortunate to find some great co-founders to go try to tackle that together with me.
And there's various ways to tackle this problem. In fact, we've had on our various podcasts multiple mental health companies, tech-focused. And I guess the most recent one was more about enabling insurance companies to more readily, pay for these types of services. And there's variations, I'd say. I'm curious as how you, from a company perspective, how you position yourself in the market.
I mean, we position ourselves as the highest quality provider for mental health services in the market. And we've demonstrated that with 12 published papers, showing our methods and outcomes. We also issued the mental health quality scorecard, which is a first in the industry look at, a sort of auditable, list of what it takes to deliver great care reliably and safely at scale. And we report very detailed, outcome measures back to all of our partners. And so that's been our foundation, our positioning from day one. Other part of that that's really critical, if you want to have high quality care, you've got to be able to deliver that care to the patient populations that need it the most. And so in our market, there's also, a lot of companies or a lot of providers sort of top out at a certain severity level that they're comfortable with within their system to treat, leaving patients with that higher severity and acuity with few options. And so we decided early on that we were going to lean into that. We developed our suicide prevention program. We now have our intensive outpatient program for substance use and mental health, allowing us to treat people all the way up to sort of the highest severity and acuity you can treat in an outpatient setting, helping to reduce admissions and readmissions and inpatient stays and ER visits and similar high cost events.
And do you work through the payers? How do you get the word out about Brightside?
We partner closely with payers. So we have close national relationships with all the major payers. We've got about 175 million lives under contract that we partner for. And so work closely on programs with our payer partners. We also work with health systems. If you went to whatever health system near you and tried to get a psychiatry appointment, chances are you've got something like a 6-month wait until the next appointment. Health systems tend to always have much more demand than they are able to meet, as well as different specialty areas within that where they may have different sort of supply imbalances. And so we partner with health systems to help solve the broader range of behavioral health needs. And then we meet consumers where they are, which is often, out looking for information on their own, giving them an easy on-ramp into care.
And now as you kind of see where Brightside sits in the overall landscape among the overall providers, I'm sure there's like a map out there somewhere about all the different mental health logos on one page and what categories they sit in and how they maybe overlap and which one's better at something than the other. How do you feel like you're doing? Do you feel good about where you sit in that overall landscape?
I feel great about where we sit. I know we have made the deepest and most robust investments in the industry in quality. There's a difference in any industry between what some marketing teams say and what some product teams have built. But I'm highly confident that we deliver the best care available. A lot of the focus in our industry has really been around streamlining a lot of the inefficiencies around credentialing, contracting, and billing, a lot of the sort of nuts and bolts from an operational standpoint of care delivery. And that's helped really streamline business operations for independent clinicians that can join platforms to do that. But it doesn't really touch upon quality. So starting to measure outcomes with measurement-based care is a beginning concept of at least being able to sort of ponder quality. But in order to move the needle on quality, you need to do things like select the right clinicians. You need to train and supervise those clinicians. You need to offer them specific resources to make sure they're delivering evidence-based care with timely interventions and informed decisions. You got to give them escalation pathways. You got to help people who may have elevated suicide risk and need specialized follow-up and care navigation and many, many more things. And so I know that looking around the landscape, we have decided that that's the part of the landscape where we want to win. That's what we care about. Mm-hmm. And believe that fundamentally, quality will win an important part of the market. It's not the easy path. It takes a lot of hard work and has a lot of complexity underneath the hood, but it's the thing that we're inspired by and care about and feel good about where that's all going.
What's different about your challenges today versus what they were maybe in the early phase of the company?
Yeah, I've told a couple of people that when I was an early stage founder, when we were like Series A, I imagined a future state when we were, saw other companies like raising a Series C and, when they seemed like they'd really gotten product market fit. And I imagined it must be pretty easy, right? You've got product market fit, like everybody wants what you got, you just keep doing more of it. And I couldn't have been more wrong. This stage of the company, like in the growth stage, is as hard or harder than the early stage, just in different ways. So one, building and maintaining a team at sort of bigger and bigger levels is really complicated. And so there's just a lot that goes to building out the infrastructure and the team and the processes and systems to make sure everybody can do the work. Our competitive landscape has gotten much more crowded. And so all of the elements of that are much more nuanced. Growing at scale, is harder and harder, right? So when you need to grow 50% from 10 million to 15 million, you need an incremental 5 million of revenue. But when you're at 100 million and you need another 50 million of revenue, that's a 10 times bigger problem to go try to solve. And often you've already been working for years trying to solve that same problem. So it's not, necessarily that it's you have a ton of new tools available to you to try to solve it. So there's a ton of hard work there. You've got to also start thinking more and more about, regulatory and legal issues. And so, the aperture widens. The number of things you've got to track is increasingly complex. And the truth is, you have more on the line, right? The further down the path you get, sort of the more it would cost to have a setback. And so there's increasing pressure on execution at each step.
Did you find that at the beginning you already had the leadership skills to scale a company? And then at the same time, looking at where you are now, do you feel like you've changed a lot as a leader?
I think fortunately, again, the thing that is both my strength and weakness, I would say, is that I'm an idealist. And so setting out to solve this problem in this way, without compromise, was really what allowed me to plant a flag and to really show up as a leader and bring other people who really believed in that mission. I mean, I think that's sort of the essential starting point of being able to be a leader. Otherwise, I think, in leading product teams, I had honed, many of the other sort of skills and processes that I think set me up to be able to be effective as a leader and collaborate well with great people around me. And I think, as the company has grown, it gets harder and harder. You're asked to do more things. And really one of the things you've got to be great at is just being a fast learner and a good decision maker under uncertainty. And I do think I'm good at those two things. There are lots and lots of things that are hard, right? Like you need to start getting audits and you need to, start doing all kinds of things you haven't done before and optimizing, elements of performance that didn't matter as much, when the company was at an earlier stage. And so the mindset really has to shift and the things you're focused on day to day. And so I'm constantly learning, constantly trying to get better and better at things. And, some of it comes really fast and some is a bit of a grind and involves making a few mistakes as we get there. Overall, that idealism allows me to continue to just be a major optimist and I think a continued effective leader for the organization. And fortunately, my investors and board tell me that they think that's the case. And I'll keep going until they tell me it's not.
Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Well, I'm going to talk about my dad here. And I'll probably get emotional doing it, but he's the reason I started Brightside. He has suffered from depression his whole life. He, for the longest time, didn't know how or wasn't able to get treatment when he was young. It wasn't until he was married to my mom that she finally convinced him to go try to get some care. But from his first appointment to when he finally got treatment that worked, it took about 10 years. He got caught in the healthcare swirl and missed follow-ups and handoffs and failed drug trials and all that kind of thing. And he just kind of quietly went through it and tried to make it so that the rest of us weren't affected by it. And so I just feel for him a lot. I'm inspired by him. And, that's why I show up to work every day. For him and for, every other family that has someone like him.